All right, welcome to the pub. I'm Jay Croucher from NBC Sports. Today, myself and Brad Thomas are going to talk to Tom Rennie, lead commentator of talkSPORT's Premier League coverage. He also hosts the Grumpy Pundits on Sirius XM. We're going to get into a lot of topics, including Everton hiring Sean Dyche and what that's going to do for their prospects. We'll talk about a lot of futures markets as well, with the Premier League on hiatus while the FA Cup is going on. So without further ado, let's bring in Tom Rennie. Tom, good to see you, coming from the east side of London, as you let me know. A bit late, but so thank you for joining us. Let's get straight into it. Let's talk about Sean Dyche. What better way to spend a Friday than talking about Sean Dyche? What do you think of the hire? Can he save Everton?
Oh, what do I think of the hire? That's such a big question. And I don't know if I've got enough time in this conversation to give you all my thoughts and feelings. Look, I think that Everton have been such a Charlie Foxtrot for such a long time. They've thrown good money after bad during the Mashiri era. He spent £700 million on transfers during his time there, which is a ludicrous amount when you consider that there's no player of quality I don't think they've signed in that period. And now, because of the outlay on players over the last few years, they can't sign players because financial fair play rules and sustainability rules mean they can only lose X amount over the last 3 years, and they've already spent that money. So now they're just trying to recoup money to spend money on lesser players. They're selling Anthony Gordon as we speak, young lad from the area going to Newcastle, £45 million. Sean Dyche, when confirmed, is going to have about half of that to spend on players before the transfer window. So it's a total mess at Everton. I think it's 9 managers in 9 years. A great drinking game, if you're out this evening, is to try and name those managers in order. Just try it. It's incredible. I was doing this the other night, and you're going, okay, so you got so Lampard, of course, Lampard, yeah, and it was Duncan Ferguson for a bit, and then it was Koeman. No, it's not Koeman. And you know, before you remember that Marco Silva worked there, you're too blotto to continue. So the whole thing has been a mess. But I will say on Sean Dyche that when he was Burnley manager, he was in charge of the worst squad in the league for a long time, the worst budget in the league for a long time. He got them into Europa League qualification, top 7 finish in 2018. The year after that, they finished in the top 10. I know he left Burnley in a difficult circumstance and they'd run out of money and they were probably going to get relegated, did after his departure last April. But they kept taking away his best players and not replacing them. Sean Dyche is a guy who can organise a team. Sean Dyche is a guy who can play better football than we give him credit for. And there's nothing wrong with playing 4-4-2 in football as well. Do the basic stuff these players would have done from when they were like 10, when they started playing, get better performances and get over the line. So I think they're more likely to stay up now than if you'd asked me last week before El Sacico, the game between West Ham and Everton, when Lampard simply had to go after that loss. And the good news for them as well is if you look at the bottom of the table right now, you've got Southampton bottom on 15, Everton joint bottom on 15 above them on goal difference, Bournemouth, who are the only team I'd guarantee you are going to go down at this point in the bottom 3 on 17, 17 Wolves, 18, 18, 18 for West Ham, Leeds and Leicester, Forest on 21, Palace on 24. There's a bunch of teams that could go down. You've only got to be really bad to stay in the league, and I think you can do that.
Yeah, I think, look, the performance against West Ham was just so insipid. West Ham didn't show up for the first 30 minutes of that match, and it didn't matter because Everton are just so poor at the moment. Tom, curious for your thoughts on, like, what's the level of talent that's left on this team? Because we're not that far removed from, playing your game when Carlo Ancelotti was manager, and maybe Everton are a chance of getting into the top 6, and now they are where they are. If you look at like Transfermarkt, they've still got the 11th highest squad value, which Juventus shouldn't be using Transfermarkt because that didn't go so well for them, but we can use it to assess at least the talent overall. But do you think there's enough here? Obviously, they miss out on Dan Juma, who goes to Tottenham instead, who hijacked the deal, which just folds into the Evertonness of the situation at the moment. But do you think there's talent here to stay up?
I love the term Evertonness, and I'm going to use that liberally moving forward. The thing is with Transfermarkt, though a very valuable resource, is it does work a lot off the transfer paid and how much they've paid for players. And Alex Iwobi was, I think, £36 million when he's worth about £6 million. So the value of the squad is a bit of a misnomer here. If you go to the team that played West Ham last week, to lose Richarlison, and not replace him last season was a huge issue that Frank Lampard kept on highlighting. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, God bless him, playing up front. He's just not coming back as the player he was 2 or 3 years ago. I don't know if that will happen. Maybe with the cross approach of Sean Dyche, it might. Alex Iwobi, I've mentioned. Damari Gray is a very hit-and-miss player. I think Idrissa Gana Gueye went to Paris Saint-Germain, maybe one of the best players in the Premier League in that position, has come back a spent force, and that's an issue. Connor Cody back playing in a 3 makes more sense, but in a 2 with Tarkowski at the start of the season, it looked reasonably strong. I think if I was looking at Everton, let's say Everton get relegated. Here's a good way of doing it. Who gets to move back to the Premier League? Jordan Pickford does. I think he's a really good goalkeeper, makes a lot of saves, and his kicking is very, very good. I think that Amadou Onana in midfield, signed during the summer, gets a move to the Premier League. And now I'm struggling. Maybe Calvert-Lewin. Calvert-Lewin comes to Burnley if they get promoted and Everton go down. Apart from that, I don't see a Premier League squad. I don't see a great deal of depth. And they're really going to have to outhouse their way to some 1-0 victories to stay in the Premier League. So I'll have to say that Transfermarkt is leading us up a bit of a blind alley there.
Yeah, Everton's an interesting case, right? I thought they were going to go after Basilia, and I guess he ultimately wanted to work with the U21 players, and good on him. I think Everton go down, but I'd probably put a little bit of money on Leeds to get relegated. Do you have any thoughts on Everton versus Leeds? I know the quality and player on Leeds and Everton is vastly different. I do think that Everton have a championship club team, but with bringing Dyche in, I think defensively they'll be a lot more stout. They'll pick up those matches where they need to get 1 point. If you had to pick between the two.
Well, I mean, just briefly on the Bielsa thing, if you're looking for an example of the chaos at Everton Football Club and the lack of competent organisation, trying to pick between those two managers, Sean Dyche and Marcelo Bielsa, is like going to a restaurant and they say, what are my options? Well, you can have ice cream or soup. Like they don't go together. This is not an option on the menu. They're so different in every conceivable way, as the point you mentioned there about Bielsa, according to the Times, wanting to be youth team manager for 6 months. All very bizarre. So that's the issue with Everton right now. They don't know what direction to go in. I think it's going to be close. Like I think the bottom 7, bottom 8, I'd throw Palace in there too, are all going to scramble for 36 points. And this is worth looking at. Everyone talks about the 40-point line. Get to the 40-point line and you'll be safe. Only West Ham in Premier League history have gone down with above 40 points. Everyone else, the line is on average across the last 10 seasons. I think it's 34.9, so 35 points. If you get 36 points, you will be safe in the Premier League. So that's the line you're looking at. I've mentioned the Everton squad already. For Leeds United, I think there's significant issues there. Firstly, I think Jesse Marsch is a very intense character, and I'm not sure that his very intense style of play is right for a relegation battle. Why? Because he's got, at the moment, I don't think the strongest defence in that group. Hilaire Meslier, the young goalkeeper, is making errors. I'm not the biggest fan of Liam Cooper at this moment in time. Very good championship defender, but looks a bit shot at Premier League level. Pascal Strout bumped out to left back. Not sure what his best position is. The back line isn't quite set. Talk of Weston McKennie coming in alongside Tyler Adams. That's a very strong midfield. I think he'd be a very good replacement for Matthias Klick, who's left the club to go to MLS, Matthias Klick. So I think there's some good elements there, plus those young talents in Willie Nonto and Crescencio Somerville give you that little bit of spice. So if I was to pick one of the two, I'd pick Leeds over Everton. But you're looking at two teams that will finish in the bottom 5, two teams that are going to struggle for 36. If I was picking it now, I'd say Everton will finish around 37 points. I see Leeds getting to around 40, but it's going to be a scramble. Every Everton game is going to be under 2.5 goals. Most Leeds games are going to be over 2.5 goals. They're going to go about it in very, very different ways. I would just suggest to your viewers, if you're going to pick one of these teams to watch, I'd probably watch Leeds.
Yes, I'd agree with that. Yeah, Everton now minus 165 to get relegated, so comfortably shorter than even money, which makes plenty of sense. Tom, you mentioned El Sacico, and for the first half an hour of that game, it looked like it was going to be David Moyes' last game in charge of West Ham. I think he probably would have gotten sacked had they lost that, and maybe even had they drawn. But Jared Bowen bails him out. Who do you think is the coach that should be most worried now that Frank Lampard is gone, who's the heavy favourite to go? Do you think it is still David Moyes, Graham Potter, potentially? Who do you like?
Do you know, I think we might be at the end of the sackings. I think the weird thing about this season is that there's been a lot of upfront sackings, pre-World Cup and post-World Cup. I think we've got to a point in the season now where I think you kind of are where you are. At the lower end of the table, there's a reason we were talking about Sean Dyche and whomever else has got jobs, Nathan Jones at Southampton. All the good candidates have gone. And if you want to get someone from another club at this point, it's going to take a lot of money to do so, or a manager to resign, which they don't because it costs them a lot of money. So I don't see there being many more sackings. I think David Moyes is safe. I've always kind of felt David Moyes is safe because he's got so much credit in the bank for what he's done previously, plus David Sullivan, the West Ham owner. I think that he doesn't know what to do next. And that's been the issue with David Sullivan during his entire career as a football club owner, being at Birmingham City or West Ham. He doesn't have a plan. He doesn't have a Roberto De Zerbi in mind to bring in next. And if David Moyes goes, it's total panic. David Moyes has come to West Ham for his second spell and is trying to rebuild the club from the ground up, including hiring preferred agents and scouts and creating networks and creating patterns of play, which previously in the Sullivan era didn't exist. So I think David Moyes, if they lose another 6 or 7 in a row, would probably have to go because of the world we live in. But he just went 7 or 8 without a win and didn't get sacked. I just think that they will do anything they can to keep him. And it's worth noting on West Ham too, this season they've conceded 25 goals. It's the 4th or 5th best defence in the league. It's the best defence in the bottom half. And they've got a better defence than Brentford, then Brighton, then Fulham, then Liverpool. I think they might be equal with Liverpool on 25, equal 4th and 5th. So they're still a good team. They've still got good players. He's still a good coach, but the offense has let them down massively. Danny Ings, great signing. Skamaka, I'm sure, will score some goals at some point. Jarrod Bowen coming back to life. I do think West Ham in the second half of the season will start nudging away from it. So I don't think they're going to be in massive trouble. Sacking-wise, we might be at the end of it. If you're going to pick out a surprise, I think there's 2 that might happen. Number 1 is Brendan Rodgers, because I think if they get into real trouble, they'd be happy to see the back of him, as he'd be happy to see the back of them. And Gary O'Neill at Bournemouth, who's got the job full-time, having taken over from Scott Parker. They've got 1 point in the last 5. They concede a lot of goals. I can guarantee you they'll get relegated as things stand. Their new owner, Bill Foley, might be a bit like, let's give it a whirl and hire someone else.
Okay, well, we touched on the bottom of the league enough. Let's talk about the top 4. Do you think the top 4 set, or do you think a Liverpool or a Chelsea can kind of make their way and play for Europe next year?
No, I think it's going to be wild. I think it's going to be wild this year at the top of the table. I think the only guarantees I would make at this point is the top 2 are going to be the top 2, and the top 2 are going to make the Champions League. The rest, what a terrific battle. I mean, you look at Newcastle United. I think it's the 3rd best defense in Europe. This season, you simply do not score against Newcastle United, 11 goals conceded. The offense has dried up a little bit. Really interested to see what they can do now with Alexander Isak fit, Anthony Gordon coming in. I think Eddie Howe has recognised they need something new, something different for the second half of the season. So that's going to be really interesting. They start scoring goals and keep the defending up. I think they're more likely than anyone else to make the top 4. The other position, look, Man United have it, and I think that Erik ten Hag has made a lot of really good improvement. But I wonder what it's like against really tough opposition. Since coming back from the World Cup, it's been a real flat track. What have they had? Forest and Bournemouth and the teams that are struggling down the bottom of the table. They finally come up against someone good. Oh, we lost against Arsenal. They have a tough and away game. Oh, we couldn't beat Crystal Palace. There are still issues there at Man United which make me doubt them. Tottenham Hotspur. So much wrong at Tottenham. I went to the Fulham game a couple of nights ago and I came away thinking I have no idea how they won. I just have no idea. They did nothing. They played poorly. I mean, sure, they've got Harry Kane, who's an elite level world-class striker. That's the difference. But apart from that, lots of issues there. I think Brighton will fall away because they keep selling players. I wouldn't be surprised to see Moises Caicedo join Trossard and everyone else that's left Brighton in the last 18 months during this window. Fulham, I think, might have peaked for this season, so I discount them from the race. I think Brentford, I think a team like that are focused so much on 40 points. They'll have a really good 2 or 3 weeks. When they get to 40 points, I can see them dropping back down again, leveling at around 48, 50. I wouldn't fancy Liverpool because I think they need massive reinvestment and it's not coming. I think if any team out of that group can make a run for it, Chelsea would be my pick, mainly because of the incredible embarrassment of riches that they have. The playing staff is ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous. A bloated squad of brilliance that Graham Potter, I'm not sure if it suits him, but I think he is going to be able to find a first 11 to go on a run of wins. I don't see him doing well against Borussia Dortmund in the Champions League in a couple of weeks. Focus on the league. I can see them going on a winning run. So at the moment, I'll pick the 4 there is. The outside bet will be Chelsea. Everyone else, a scramble for the Europa and Conference.
Yeah, I like that. And I think that Liverpool-Chelsea game, which was horrific, outside of Mudryk coming in and spicing it up a little bit in the second half, I thought Chelsea looked like the better team by margin for most of that game. And I do think they have this weird thing now. It's kind of like when Arsenal used to have under Wenger, when they had Cazorla and Wilshere and Ramsey and Rosicky, where it's just all these, they had 15 different attacking midfielders who were all best playing a central attacking mid. And now Chelsea have got all these forwards who aren't strikers and they can't score, but they can look really cool. And Mudryk kind of ties right into that, where Mudryk doesn't actually score goals is the thing about him. He doesn't actually score them. He just looks awesome and sets them up and played with a lot of flair at Anfield. But I agree. I think that Chelsea, I think that over the course of a whole season, if they had this wealth of attacking options, might be a bad thing, just because some of them are not going to be able to play, and they would be the best player on Everton if they were getting game time. But you do figure that there's just so much talent there, and Potter is good enough of a manager that it just has to click, and they should be at least pushing, maybe not for the top 4. I think that might be gone at this point, but certainly for the top 6. Tom, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's getting late on the east side of London. Please say hello to the Premier League title for me, a little to the north of you in about 4 months. Can you tell people where to follow you?
You can find me on social media if it still exists by the end of this conversation. Thomas J. Rennie is where to do so. I know we post all our videos on there from SiriusXM FC, where I'm hosting every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, Grumpy Pundits from 9 to 12 Eastern. You can also find my podcast, Week in the Tackle, wherever you get your podcasts, out every Monday and Friday. So search for all that.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom. Thanks for joining. All right, Brad, let's close off. There is no Premier League action this weekend, but there is a lot going on in English football. What are your best bets in the FA Cup?
Yeah, FA Cup, I'm going to go with Brighton versus Liverpool, both teams to score and over 2.5 goals. The last time these two teams met, I felt like I was robbed of free money. Brighton scored 3 goals, but Liverpool couldn't find the back of the net. That should have been an auto hammer for both teams to score and over 2.5 goals. We talked about Liverpool. The problem with Liverpool is defensively, they're god-awful. They can't stop conceding, and it feels like Father Time is catching up to that back line. And you also have Trent Alexander-Arnold, who is often out of place and not playing very well. And on Brighton, De Zerbi just has them sped up so much. Their attack, press, attack. So I love that. Another one that I really, really like, it's a little cheeky, a little bit of a parlay, and this is Reading versus United. I like Bruno Fernandes to score a goal and to assist. And I think we get a free assist because anytime he puts the ball on Rashford's foot, it feels like it's going in the back of the net. And they're playing against a side who concede a ton of goals, conceded 42 goals in the championship flight. So I think Bruno will be able to get the back of the net himself. It's one of those fun bets where you don't have to put a ton of money on, but you can watch the match and have a lot of fun rooting for it.
Very cheeky, Brad. Very cheeky. It is pretty incredible to see Brighton basically as pick against Liverpool on the three-way. They're plus 160, Liverpool plus 155, and then the tie is plus 250. I like all those looks that you said. Is there any futures market that at the moment that you're tracking in the Premier League?
Yeah, I am tracking the Southampton to be relegated. I gave this out at plus 250 at the beginning of the season. It's now minus 150. And honestly, I think it should be priced closer to minus 200. If you watch the Southampton team, even Saints fans will tell you that they look like a team who's destined for the championship division. Like, they don't play with any pizzazz. They don't play with any sense of urgency. And defensively, they're terrible. If you have a team who's conceding a ton of goals, but can't go forward and can't get quality looks in the final third, they're destined to be relegated. You need one of the other. You need to score a ton of goals or you need to play very stout in defense. I'm very happy to see that price. Is there anything that you have your eye on?
Brighton. I'm a believer in Brighton. They're always now they're a caricature of themselves with their unexpected goals darling. And the show just keeps on rolling no matter who is managing, no matter who's playing. And I like them to finish in the top 6. It's plus 138 at the moment. You look at sites like 538 who say that should be shorter than even money. So with just how uninspiring Liverpool look at the moment, with all the questions around Chelsea, Tottenham have not been good, and they've actually, I mean, they've overperformed based on their expected goals and where they should be on the table, and they're still not in a very impressive spot. So even though they don't have the star power, they don't have the transfer market valuation, I do think that Brighton, when it's all said and done, I think that they will be in the top 6. I think it's basically a coin flip. And so when you're getting plus 138, you're getting much better than a coin flip. So, yeah, cheer for Brighton, and
yes,
cheer for every team that is in Southampton on your side. All right, we'll close out there. Thanks everyone for tuning in. From myself, you can follow me on Twitter at CroucherJD. You can follow Brad Thomas at Mr. Brad Thomas on Twitter. Thanks again to Tom Rennie, and we'll see you soon.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. For even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock and be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend on USA Network and on Peacock. We will see you over there.